Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. That's right, this is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today, and I hope everyone is having the very best of Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to those who don't celebrate Christmas. I hope that the holiday has found you with joy and cheer. And of course, we want to start, and we're going to go through this episode. We want you to know that if you are feeling down, if you are feeling bad, if you are in a difficult situation in your life, as you can see on the screen, there is the suicide hotline, the domestic abuse hotline, and the substance abuse hotlines. Please do use them. Reach out to your friends, reach out to others, because help is there and you will be better. Things will change. So we want that message for everyone, and that will be on the screen today throughout the episode. And, well, it's been quite a week, has it not? So much has been going on. And I want to start, before we say anything else, I want to mention there's a great positive message we want to remind you about. You may or may not have heard of this. The news about it is just coming out today, even though this happened on December 18th. And as being reported by the Washington Examiner, there was a 4-year-old child that was rescued after 24 days walking around in the southern Arizona desert. I can't imagine something more terrifying, more horrifying for a parent to know that their child has just walked away. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to help them. And then they find out 24 hours later, their child is fine. The kid is safe. Nothing happened to him. He was 5.5 miles away from home. He was walking around in circles, and they found him. Thank God for the our CBP, the Customs Border Patrol. You know, the very same people that there are some in this nation who would want to eliminate that division. Remember the whips scandal, the supposed scandal that came out, saying that we should shut down the Border Patrol? Well, it was the Border Patrol that found the child, thank God. So it was a great story and a great message. There wasn't a lot of very super positive things to talk about in the last couple of days. But there was something else that I thought was really fun. And by the way, if you've never been on the channel before, we welcome you. We thank you. We're happy to have you as part of our audience. This is a live stream conversation with you. We want to hear your voice and your comments about whatever is going on to tell us what you think, because we want to hear your voice. We believe in the First Amendment, no matter where in the world you are. And so I wanted to just point out something that I thought was rather funny, rather interesting, and unique. And we just saw this the other day, obviously. And I was watching one of my favorites, Coleon Noor, who talks about firearms and the Second Amendment, like myself. Hello, hot chicks. Good to see you. And he brought up something that I'm sure you've heard by now, but I think it deserves being seen.
It's the most incredibly insane thing I've ever seen.
I agree.
I hope you have a wonderful Christmas.
Well, yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas as well. Merry Christmas, and let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree. Hey, by the way, where are you in Oregon?
Yeah, they cut the feed.
Where's your home?
Gone.
I think we lost him.
You didn't lose them. They got rid of them. It's okay. Maybe you don't think it was as funny as I was. And hot chicks, it is always good to have you here. It's good to have our entire audience here with us on any day, especially the holidays. And I was just watching that with Joe Biden, and I have to tell you, I was laughing. I thought it was funny. It's also a little bit sad, to be honest, because we're talking about the different things that are affecting people. Mental health is important, obviously. It's a key factor in suicide, domestic abuse, substance abuse. Mental health is a factor. And so it's kind of sad to see that since this summer, we have seen that Let's Go Brandon has been used in a way that is somewhat disrespectful to the president. And obviously, it's been in the news. It's been trying to We've heard it several times that they've tried to reimagine that saying. And here is Joe Biden going, he agrees, let's go, Brendan. No clue on his face, in his response. He has no idea what's being said. Jill Biden, if you look at the video, Jill, as I just showed you, she caught it instantly. She knew why the call got cut instantly. But Joe Biden had no idea what was just said to him. And while there is some humor in it, there's a big sadness here. Because around the world, especially world leaders in Russia, in China, in North Korea, they're paying attention to this. In Iran, they're paying attention to this, and they're seeing a disconnect. That either Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on in the nation, that there are millions of people who have this feeling, or he doesn't know what's going on. He's not mentally there. Hot Chicks mentioned she thought it was disrespectful, but not prohibited. And we have to say, it is the First Amendment right. A lot of people watch this program from other countries. Sometimes they don't understand. When we have these conversations here in America, and they say, well, how could you say that? How could that even be allowed? It's called the First Amendment. We have an unalienable right in America that no matter who is in any elected office, we have the right to tell them that we have a displeasure with them, even if that is disrespectful, even if that is unpleasant. So the First Amendment right of this gentleman is absolutely secure. He has the right to say to his elected officials that he doesn't like them, that he doesn't agree with them. We've heard this in PTAs and school board meetings across this nation, and it's been said over and over again. You don't have to like what's being said. It is the right of the individuals, of the public, to tell you, to let you know what their thoughts are directly. It's kind of like this program. You can tell us your thoughts directly, and you can say, I totally disagree. You can say, I think it's wrong. I respect that. And that's fine. But we need to be able to have these conversations. How is Joe Biden? I think the White House is in a vacuum, an echo chamber, as they call it, that he's not hearing what real people are feeling and what they feel about his policies. When you go to the store, when you are going to the store and you're paying 22% more for milk and eggs and meat, actually meat's even higher, do you feel like the White House has done its job, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that they've been doing their job properly? Do you think that they even understand? Do you think Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, do you think they even know that the cost has gone up? Because they don't go to the store. Their staff goes to the store. They're being paid by you in your taxes. This is all a write-off. They don't know what's going on. They're not paying taxes like you, and that's a fact. They do not pay taxes on the money like you do on their paycheck. When they get their $200,000, $170,000, it's $175,000 for a member of Congress, they don't get taxed. You get taxed. They don't. They have exemptions. They're not feeling the economy like you're feeling the economy. So sometimes these things need to be said. Now, I think there are excesses to that kind of expression, like when it was that, I think it was an Iraqi who threw his shoes at President George Bush. That's an absolute disrespect. That is an insult to the nation. There's a difference between saying to your elected officials, even the one in the White House, I think you're doing a bad job. And there's another thing with throwing a shoe. But you may disagree. Just like Hot Chick says, it's disrespectful. Okay, I can understand that. Jason mentions he is so disabled, it is just sad. It is sad to see what's happening with Joe Biden. It really is. To see that he didn't recognize what's going on. And when I say that there's an echo chamber going on around him so that he's not connecting to things like you and I do, I want you to see this. put in Biden Brandon joke. You'll see the news. The news media is falling all over itself right now to try and let people know this was just a joke. It was a really bad joke. This wasn't serious. No one was being serious here. Let's go, Brent. That was a joke. Joe Biden knew it was a joke. This was funny. Ha ha. No, it wasn't. It was live. And it wasn't a joke. Because if you actually look at some of the articles, like I have, from the Daily Mail over in the United Kingdom, when they're reporting on this, because they can't say this to the Queen. They can't say this to Prime Minister Boris Johnson. They can't say that to their Prime Minister. It is literally a crime in Canada, in the United Kingdom, to do what just happened to Joe Biden. It is a crime. You will go to jail. So there is a difference in the way the world looks at this, and that's important. Because when they're seeing it, here's the thing that's very important, and it's buried in this story. Yes, he said this. Yes, he meant to say it. Yes, he didn't mean it as a disrespect. He thought it was a joke. He didn't know that this was a live stream that was going on. He did record it. He is frustrated with Joe Biden because he thinks he could be doing a better job. He stands by the statement he made. And I mean, look how far you have to go into this story before you find out that he says, I thought it was animated. I didn't know this was real at first. And more importantly, that he is being attacked. Reviewers have left, people are attacking the business he is working at. One of the very first things that are being said in these articles is his business. What does that have to do with what he said? Because people are now attacking, they're trying to cancel the business that he works at. That's not the First Amendment. You don't have to like what he said. And you can comment, and please do, that he was wrong. Fair enough. But to attack his business, to attack his livelihood, to attack his family, because you don't agree with his political point of view, something is wrong with that. Something is wrong with that. It's one thing to say, I didn't think that was funny. It's one thing to say, I think that was disrespectful. It's one thing to say that I think Joe Biden is troubled, that he didn't realize what was happening to him. And it's another thing to say, and now let's punish people for a non-crime. And that's the thing I think a lot of people around the world, because you may be in another country where you don't have the right to criticize your elected officials publicly. In fact, in many countries around the world, you'll get killed if you criticize your elected leaders publicly. Think of China. The wonderful, beautiful socialist nation of China will kill you. If you say Xi Jinping, you say that to him and say that, oh, he will kill you. You will disappear. You will be like the Uyghurs, just gone into a concentration camp, never to be seen again, because that's what communist nations do. But in the United States, you can have a comment, but now, because he expressed himself, people are punishing him. See, I wouldn't be upset if they're just making comments saying, hey, we don't like what you said. I think you're wrong. It's another thing when we see that people feel like they are justified in punishing the business he works at and his family, who also work at that business, that they're punishing them for his political statement that they don't like. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean you get to punish people for it. And if that is the standard we have in the United States, as is becoming more and more true and more real, that's troubling. Because what happens when it's your guy? Okay, so it's okay to punish people for non-crimes. I mean, we've been seeing this trend coming for a while. It's one of the reasons why I hate red flag laws, because you're being punished for a non-crime. You're being punished because someone felt like you're a danger. That's the problem that we have to be aware of. That's the thing we have to look at very carefully here. Whether you think it was funny or not doesn't really matter. Whether you think it's disrespectful or not isn't the point. It's that people will punish you for having an opinion. what are we doing in this country? Where are we going? That we're able to see that kind of just insanity. Again, I'm not telling you that you have to agree with what was said. I'm not telling you have to think it's funny, although I did. What I am telling you, though, is we shouldn't punish people for having that opinion. There's a difference. We should have that conversation. We should be able to have that point of view. And we should be able to express it as the most free nation in the world, which we are, as the pinnacle of democracy in the world, which we are. We have to lead by example. And that example doesn't say, and you punish people for a non-crime. That's something you would expect to come out of China. That's something that is happening right now in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran. We see this in Venezuela, that people are being punished for non-crimes just because the elected officials in charge don't like it. And that's not something we need to emulate in this nation. And if you think I am wrong, please call in 607-242-1582. You're able to reach us with a text or a chat in YouTube, Facebook, DLive, Twitter. Tell us that you think we're wrong. Explain to me what I'm missing here, where it is justified and it's good, and we should see people punished for a non-crime because someone feels like they didn't like it. Call it a microaggression, call it whatever you want. Call it racist if you want to. I don't care. The problem is this is a non-crime. And I think that's something that's being missed in the conversation and something that is not being highlighted. Like I show you, it's buried in the story. It's about 15 paragraphs down. You're not supposed to read that people are trying to punish the business for the individual. And think about this. If that is allowed to go through, if that is okay, what about you? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the issue is. Is it your politics? Is it your belief on the Second Amendment, your freedom of speech? Is it your right to privacy? Do you get to make comments anymore about anyone? What about the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, and he's a progressive? Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you don't like who he picked, who's a progressive for the chief of police of New York City. Maybe it's because in my area, in the southern tier of New York, the police are taking their time to do an investigation of a potential sexual assault of women. And what if you're thinking it's going too slow and you want to comment on that? Should you be punished for that? Think about that, folks. Does that not trouble you that is a trend we are seeing more and more frequently? I mean, we've seen it with various comedians. We've seen it with actors. We've seen it with senators. Senator Al Franken had this happen to him as well, where the accusations and the displeasure, the feelings of certain people trump and beat up everything else. And people have to be punished for it. Their livelihoods have to be destroyed for that. We need to stop that trend. At least that's what I think. You may tell me, Mike, you're wrong. And I want to hear it. Of course, I always like to hear when people agree with me too, but if you think I'm wrong, tell me that you think I've missed something here. Because I think that's the bigger issue in that story. The part that's not being talked about. As the media is flooding, as they're just swamping you with the idea, no, it was a joke. No, it was serious. And what's happening as a result is even more serious. But that's the way I think about it. And I think that's something that we need to talk about because going into 2022, that's going to be critical. That's going to be absolutely critical. And speaking of 2022 and things that are critical to our lives, it was reported yesterday, actually today, 26th, it was reported that the New York Nurse Association is blasting the new CDC isolation guidance as inconsistent with proven science, as per CBS News. And watch, this channel may be shut down because I am quoting the major news media. And once before, when we were quoting the major news media on reported information, CBS News, CBS, I'm going to the far left to get this information, And CBS is saying this, and they're reporting on this, and we may get our channel shut down for it. But I want to have this conversation with you. So it's reported right now that there have been 44,000 positive tests for the latest pandemic variant, and all pandemic variants combined in New York State. But the thing I want to focus on, that's equated to 69 deaths. 69. And in almost any chart you want to look at, not the short charts, but stretched out, you look at it, this is as good as it gets. We haven't seen numbers so good, especially in the middle of winter, while we've been going through the pandemic. This is the mildest variant we have ever seen. And the answer that we are getting from government, and in particular, Governor Kathy Hochul, is we need to punish our healthcare workers again. Remember, it was just 2 months ago that Kathy Hochul, the appointed governor of New York, fired 34,000 of our doctors, our nurses, and our healthcare workers, which has caused the current crisis in our hospitals. The crisis in our hospitals did not start because of the latest version of the pandemic variant. The crisis currently started when she fired 34,000 doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals at a time that we were already short the number of people we need for healthcare in New York State. And this is something similar to what's happened in California, in Michigan, and in several other states throughout this nation. So the crisis was created by appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, and now she is doubling down on that, and the New York State Nurses Association is reacting to this because it is not scientific. In fact, they say, and I want to be very clear, quote, "This guidance is inconsistent with proven science, vague, and doesn't provide definitions or explain standards at a time when decision-making for healthcare systems is critical." They go on to say, not prioritizing the safety and retention of healthcare workers from the beginning of the pandemic is what exacerbated staffing shortages. That's job number one in pandemic response. This guidance is only going to worsen the shortage and put our patients at risk. Our healthcare workers deserve better, and our patients deserve better. That's been the biggest problem in the entire pandemic response, no matter which person was in the White House. We have been looking at this the wrong way. We have been attacking some of our healthcare workers and putting them into unbelievable positions and then firing them in those unbelievable positions they've been placed into. They are between a rock and a hard place, and government, based on its feelings, again, feelings, and their political ideology, is causing us to have harm. Imagine if New York State had an extra 34,000 doctors and nurses and healthcare workers. We wouldn't be having a growth in the number of hospitalizations to the extent, or the overburdening of hospitals, as we're told, as we're seeing. The reason why hospitals are overburdened, and a lot of people don't realize this, hospitals cut, when they have less staff, they cut the number of things they do. They cut down the number of operations. They cut down the number of beds that they have. That's just a fact. So we're being overburdened because we have less people to take care of the people who need the help. We have less people today than we did in 2020. Do you think that's causing a problem? For cancer patients, dialysis, for people with various, you break your arm, as well as people dealing with the pandemic. That's where the problem is. The problem is our government, and the New York State Nurses Association is pointing it out, making it as blatantly clear as they can. The problem is being made worse because idiots in our government are making terrible decisions based on politics and fear, and not what's the best choice for the public. Now, we will also say, we're not doctors. We're not giving you a medical diagnosis. We're not giving you medical advice. That's not what we do. We deal with politics here. And we're talking about the political implications of the things that are affecting us in this case. If you want to speak, we advise you, speak with your healthcare professional, your doctor, about your personal healthcare, about your personal healthcare choices that you have. They are not in the control of the government. The government cannot mandate and micromanage your life. You have that choice. Make whatever choice you think is best for you along with your doctor, whatever that may be. We're not going to tell you what to do or not to do. But we are going to tell you the government doesn't have the right to make the decision for you because the government is stupid. Government is, by definition, dumb and slow. And that's true of every government in the world, in the history of the world. Governments move slowly, and they're usually very dumb compared to individuals. Individuals know how to run your life better than the government knows how to run your life. That's a fact. You can run your life better than the government can. But yet we have these politicians like appointed Governor Kathy Hochul and Governor Newsom in California and Governor Whitmer in Michigan who think they know how to run your life and your healthcare better than you do. And I think that's where the biggest problem is. And they're making it worse for people. Jason mentions, problem is, I don't believe anything they are telling us in Bergen County. They reported 13 pandemic hospital cases and were saying that they were almost at max. Again, part of the problem is how many we lost. The estimate I have heard from various sources, both in the news and in politics and in the medical field, is we lost somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200 doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers in September due to appointed Governor Kathy Hochul's mandate, her decree. She fired about 1,000 of our workers. That means, and as a direct result, as we reported on this channel, the number of things that our hospitals did shut down. They cut down entire wings. And so, yeah, I can believe that they're almost at max because hospitals are always almost at max. Hospitals never keep empty beds. They never keep extra surgical wings just sitting around. They don't have empty seats. They're almost always. And you can speak to doctors and administrators. You can speak to politicians who follow this before the pandemic and since the pandemic. Hospitals always try to keep at a maximum, about 90% capacity. That's what they look to keep, about 90%, because it's cost effective. If they have beds and nurses and doctors just standing around doing nothing, they're losing money. So they don't keep extra people just sitting there waiting just in case. So when we lost 1,200 doctors in the southern tier of New York, they cut the hospitals, they cut the amount of services they provide, they made it harder for people who have cancer, and I have friends who are suffering from cancer right now, and this is affecting their lives. I have friends who have been suffering from various maladies, and it's affecting their lives because it's harder for them to get the help because their doctors were kicked out of the state by appointed Governor Kathy Hochul. Ms. K mentions, yes, empty beds cost money on a daily basis. Absolutely. And as a business, and hospitals are generally businesses to some degree or another, they don't keep extra beds and doctors just sitting around. So every hospital is about 85 to 90% full at all times. And if they have extra beds, if they're sitting at 65, 70% capacity, they get rid of doctors, nurses, and they cut out wings. The problem is that even if we wanted to, and this is the important thing to think about this, and how bad it is government has been in New York State, California, Michigan, and others, is that even if we wanted to increase the number of doctors, nurses, and open up more beds to get back to the capacity that we had in 2020, we can't do it because those doctors and nurses were fired. They're gone. They don't have jobs anymore. They can't work in New York State anymore. There's the problem. There's your problem. They can't expand back to where we were in 2020 because the elected official appointed Governor Kathy Hochul and this New York State legislature, the state Senate and the state assembly gave all the power and said, well, no, we're getting rid of those people. They didn't think about the consequences. They never thought about, we're not done with this pandemic. They didn't think about, what about the people with cancer and other services that they have needs for? They didn't care. Politically, they said, oh, well, no, we're just going to get rid of them because you have to do what we say. The mandate is absolute. You have no choice. The government will control your choices. And when they made that decision and didn't think about the consequences, that led to today where we have less capacity and less ability to take care of the public. And it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree about the pandemic vaccine. Whether you agree with it or not, that doesn't change. You can't get the services that we could have gotten in 2020 because they don't exist anymore, because politicians in New York State, the single party rule of New York, is so stupid they didn't think that, hey, maybe we would need those extra people. It's just ridiculous. And thank God that the latest variant is so mild. It's basically a cold. It's killing almost no one. Even with pre-existing conditions, people are perfectly fine for the most part. I think there's literally hundreds of people who died versus millions of people that died around the world. It's not that deadly. It is the least deadly form of this pandemic that we have ever seen by magnitudes. And children are the least likely of anyone on the face of the earth to be affected. Yet we still hear mandate, mandate, mandate. Makes no sense. Scientifically, it makes no sense. And if you disagree, I'm perfectly happy to hear the counter argument. Please tell me why having an extra 34,000 doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers in New York State would not be a benefit to the people of New York. Please explain that to me. Because I've asked appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, I have asked members of the state Senate, the state Assembly, and they won't answer the question. I've asked members of Congress, like Congressman Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th. He won't answer the question. Because I don't think there is an answer that is going to get them the politics that they want. Jason mentions, now they're bribing people to come into New York and paying for education for nurses, $500 worth. This was released Friday. I know. Because the same thing. When we let go of those 34,000 doctors and nurses, they went to other states. They got paid more money for doing the same job. I know. I've spoken to many of the doctors and nurses. I've had interviews with them, some of them public, some of them not. You can see the coverage. We've done vaccine protests that happened in the Binghamton, New York, and around in the surrounding area. We've covered that live, the only news coverage of all of the events that happened in this state, in this region. And they told us they're getting paid. They left. When appointed Governor Kathy Hochul said, it's my way or the highway, it's a mandate, you have no choice, you have no freedom, they said, bye, we're going to another state where we do have freedom. And now we have to spend more money, your taxes, the money that the New York State is now offering to get back the people that we already had, to get new people in to replace them. That's coming out of your pocket. That's your money. That's your property taxes, your school taxes, the cost of goods in New York State. You're paying for this. And by the way, that's not a progressive tax. If the less money you have, the more poor you are, the more money you're paying. The more it's going to cost you, the poorer you are. Of course, they did this to help you because they're from the government and they're there to help. And their help wound up giving you less doctors, less nurses, less services, and left you on your own. And now they're going to take more money from you to try and fix the problem they created. You don't have to believe me. Funding for, well, there's also another program that's paying. Now, Jason mentions that the funding was for 500 workers. There's also another program that's paying for an incentive for a sign-on bonus, and I believe it's $500 as well. And I don't think I'm confusing the two, but they both exist. So we have to understand, we have to hold our elected officials accountable. We have to understand that they're not asking the question, and then what? It's one of the biggest things I've been saying for the last 15 years in doing political commentary. And then what? Every politician, I don't care what party they're in. Yes, I'm talking about Democrats because they're in charge, especially in New York State and in California and in Illinois and in Michigan. So yeah, I'm going to pick on them and in particular the progressives, but you can say this about Republicans and conservatives and libertarians too. And then what? I want to do X, and then what happens? And what kind of crisis do we have to go through before they suddenly decide, oh my God, you know what? We need to fix this problem. Well, you caused the problem in the first place. You didn't even think 2 minutes into the future to say, well, you know, we don't need to do this. We're going to make this worse. So I'm holding them accountable. We should, as a public, hold them accountable. And we shouldn't be threatened like the internet overlords will and say, oh, we will shut you down. We will make you a non-person if you question this. Screw you. This is America. We can say this. We should ask this. And when we do ask our politicians, and what happens next, and they get an answer and say, we have a plan for that, and tell us what the plan is, you know what? Life is way better for everyone. And when we don't hold them to that expectation, when we don't think about that, when we just go by the headlines and say, okay, then our politicians screw us because they didn't think ahead. It's that obvious. It's that real. It's that true. And it happens all the time. And that, you know, and we see this a lot. And we're being told by our politicians, well, you just don't understand. Sure we do. We understand. Americans aren't stupid. I know. There's all the memes around the world, the dumb American, the Southerner or the farmer. Americans are smart. We're not dumb people. We can figure things out. And that's why we live good lives. That's why we make good decisions on a regular basis. Because if I ask you, what are you going to do next week? You have a plan. If I ask you about how you're going to spend your money for the holidays, you have a plan. If you're planning to go on vacation, you have a plan. You plan out your economics. You plan out the trip. You make plans. Ask politicians what happens 1 month after your law is in place. They have no idea. If you ask appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, gee, Governor Hochul, do you think the 34,000 healthcare workers you fired has any impact on what's happening to New York State and the people of New York State right now? She'll look at you with a blank face and go, what are you talking about? How could those things be connected? Because no one else would dare ask her that question. We will. You'll never hear that from the mainstream media. In fact, the mainstream media is going to go the exact opposite way. And if you think I'm wrong, let me explain what I mean. Because we're going to go around the United States today. We're going to take a look at the United States and the rest of the world. We have some things we want to talk about. And of course, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear about the issues you want to talk about. And you can talk about anything. But something I wanted to bring up, because again, this is something that you probably didn't hear about. Something that you probably weren't told about. It's not big news, but it is out there. Right now, in Florida, on Spanish radio, people are saying Kamala Harris sucks. That's exactly what they're saying. In Florida right now, if you're listening to Spanish radio, Spanish news commentary, people are saying Kamala Harris sucks. They're not all saying it at once. They're not saying it in some massive wave, but a bunch of people having these conversations. And they're having this, and Democrats are freaking out. Florida Democrats are like, oh my God, Spanish people are saying Kamala Harris sucks. They can't do that. There has to be, this is some kind of plan. This is a plot. It is a Republican conservative plot. Maybe libertarians are involved as well. This is deceptive and it's misinformation. How could you possibly allow this? They not for 1 second think that maybe, just maybe, people are saying that Kamala Harris sucks because she does. Because she's a horrible leader. She's a horrible, just a horrible elected official. She's doing a horrible job. And what we're hearing from the Democratic Party and some of their operatives is that they're talking about Kamala Harris and they said the same thing. This woman who's done nothing. It was a different person on the station and different stations. And then he goes, oh God, they've got to be talking on a phone bank. It can't just be people making a decision based on what we're seeing, like inflation or the reaction of Russia to what the United States has said or anything. No, it can't be that. It can't be what we did in Afghanistan and the 450, if not 2,000 Americans we abandoned over there. Can't be that. Can't be our open border. No, those can't be reasons why someone might say that the elected officials in the White House have screwed up. No, you can't say that. It's got to be a plot. It's got to be political. Okay, so let's go into this. And the story in Politico makes it very clear. There is no definitive proof of a coordinated campaign attacking Harris on South Florida radio. None. It could be organic criticism. It could be she's just screwed up. Now, Politico, wow, did I lose everybody? According to YouTube, Facebook, everybody said, oh no, okay, maybe this isn't as interesting. I don't know. So Politico themselves, hearing the claims being made by the Democrats, went out and they recorded some of the segments on the local programs themselves. They themselves listened to different stations. You know what? No proof. Nothing coordinated. This is organic. And I'll tell you why. Because as we have covered on this channel many different times throughout this year, the southern border. Kamala's having cupcakes in New Jersey. Meanwhile, she's missing what's going on with the economy. She's not involved with China, and the protests are continuing. How about the fact that Dan Quayle is more popular than Kamala Harris? Dan Quayle, who was embarrassed. He was embarrassed as vice president. And he is more popular than Kamala Harris. She's sitting at about 23% popularity. And that's not even to mention that she embarrassed the United States and insulted our allies in South Korea as she was wiping her hand after shaking the hand of the South Korean President Moon, insulting everyone in South Korea and making the diplomatic gestures of the United States in Southeast Asia that much harder. She screwed up. She's a terrible, terrible president. Belen, thank you, Belen, for letting me know. First of all, thank you for joining the program. And Belen, thank you for letting me know. I see a different real time. Some of the numbers are hidden from me. So there could be 2,000 people watching the program right now, or there could be 2. I don't know. The numbers are not accurate, but I see them fluctuating, so it makes me wonder. And I wanted to address this because how bad is Kamala Harris? Why are Hispanics throughout southern Florida, throughout the nation, are saying Kamala Harris sucks? Why people are not looking forward to the fact that when Joe Biden retires or is kicked out because of the 25th Amendment, as this program believes will happen right after the 2022 midterm elections, we're going to see Joe Biden out. And in January of 2023, a year from now, Kamala Harris will be in charge. And people are terrified about that. They hate that idea because they think she's horrible. She's miserable. Not just because of what she said to Charlemagne on TV, not just because she was ducking the question and then became a petulant child and scolded him for daring to say that that the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has failed the American people, that inflation is up, and that they're picking on Joe Manchin because he's stopping the Biden administration from making inflation even worse. No. Let me show you. Because this happened today. Kamala Harris was on Face the Nation today. And she was speaking, and this particular part of it made me stand out. And this is from Margaret Brennan from Face the Nation. And she asked the question, but particularly in the Northeast, we're already seeing hospitals overwhelmed with one of the pandemic variants. We've just talked about why they're not overwhelmed. There is a threat of that, but they're not overwhelmed yet. And that's because they have 34,000 less doctors. Going on, Margaret Brennan says, inflation is real. We told you that in February 17th of 2021. We told you that inflation is real. And they're still underreporting it. They're saying it's 6.8%. No, it's closer to about 12%. And we expect it to go higher as more and more of the Biden-Harris agenda gets through the Democratic Party. We're going to see it get worse. So inflation is real. She goes on to say, it's going to be with us as long as the pandemic dominates. As you know, the exhaustion is just with us all the time. When can you tell the American people this will end? The key thing I want you to think about that is, this is a news reporter. She is talking to you. She is speaking to Kamala Harris as if this is the voice of the public to this elected official via Face the Nation. And she says that she is assuming that inflation is tied to the pandemic. That is stupid. And she knows it. She knows that's not real, that it's not true. This is a way to deflect the problems with the economy and not pay attention to the fact that this is a direct result of the economic policies of the Biden-Harris administration. That it is their policies and the agenda in Congress and in the Senate under Democrats that have failed Americans. So they want to blame it on something that they have absolutely no control over, which is a virus. A virus that is around the world, and there is no way to stop the virus. So it's the virus's fault. Guess what? The pandemic doesn't buy anything. The pandemic doesn't unload containers off of ships and drive them across the nation. They don't do that. The pandemic isn't loading up trucks in California, which isn't happening right now, and driving them to New York so that you can have Christmas gifts on time. That's not happening. The pandemic is a virus. It has nothing to do with the economy when we have pumped in trillions of dollars. We have spent double the amount of money that we bring in as a nation in taxes, and we spent double that in just 11 months, and actually far less than that, and we have caused inflation. We devalued our money. The more money you print, the less it is worth. That is the lesson of the Weimar Republic out of Germany. It is what we saw in the banana republics in the 1980s and 90s throughout all of Central and South America. It's true around the world. You print money all day and all night, the money is worth less. It causes inflation. That is a reality. And that's just one part of the problem. That doesn't even take into account the fact that Joe Biden, when he fired 11,000 pipeline workers that were working on the XL pipeline, he didn't just fire 11,000 people. That's 11,000 people who went to stores. They went to diners. They went to hotels to live, to work. They had to fix their cars. They needed mechanics. They had to go to gas stations. They had to buy food. They were paying rent and they were paying their mortgages. All of that went away. It wasn't just 11,000 people. It's 11,000 people that affect, if every one of those 11,000 people only had one bill and one person that they affected, whether it was a restaurant, a bar, a hotel, their mortgage, their rent, then that's another 11, that's 22,000 people. And the number is way bigger. Just think in your life. How many people are affected by the money you spend? How many stores would be affected if you and everyone else around you stopped spending money in that store? How many of them would be able to survive? How many would close because of that? And that's what Joe Biden did. And that affected the economy. And it has a long-term effect. This is why the economy is bad. This is why inflation is real. And they're trying to tell you now, Politico's trying to tell you, no, it's because of the pandemic. No, it's not. They're lying to your face. Lying right to your face. If you think I'm wrong, please, I'm happy to have that conversation. I have asked every elected official that is in charge. I've gone to state senate. I've gone to our state assembly. I've gone to, excuse me, I've tried to reach our governor, the appointed governor, Kathy Hochul. I've tried to reach out to congressmen like Congressman Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District. They refuse to answer this. They don't want to have this conversation because the moment they have to actually answer this, they'll tell you, if they're asked the question, they can't lie about this. It is a bald-faced lie. But it's about you being afraid. It's about you not thinking. And what does Kamala say? What can I say? People have the power to impact tomorrow, and we can't shortchange the significance of that. Nothing. She has nothing to say. She has nothing to say. This will never end. This will never end. Because this isn't about you. I've said this on this program before. You can tell me if you agree, tell me if you disagree. The entire actions about the pandemic and the spending, this is about your kids. It's like critical race theory, the application of critical race theory. It's about your kids. It's about programming your children to think only as much as the government will allow them to think. The kids are being taught when the government says it's a pandemic, they do what they are told. When the government tells them that the government says, I have control of your health care, the kid goes, okay. When they are told that white people are evil and black people are victims, the kids go, okay, because that's what they've been taught all their lives. This isn't about Kamala. This is about your kids. Kamala's lying to you and me, and she's training your kids to never question the government, to never question the officials that are in there, and to always support them no matter what. Because they are taught, if you don't, it'll get worse. It's only going to be worse if you don't do what we say. Because if you actually critically think about it, you realize that every time the government gets involved, it gets worse because government doesn't think about what's going on. They don't think about tomorrow. I don't know, maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think, Mike, you just don't understand. Maybe I'm missing something. Is there something I'm missing in what I'm saying? Is it not making sense? You can tell me. If you think, Mike, you're just completely off base. You know, it's a question I think is important. Hang on. So I'm asking this question to everyone out there. Is the pandemic more about teaching children to comply, or is it about making adults comply? Is this about the freedom of you and me? I'm 53. Or is it about about those 8-year-olds, those 5-year-olds, those 10-year-olds, teaching them to comply and not to question the government or else? I want to hear what you think about this. Whether you're watching this live or if you watch this afterwards, you're seeing it, leave it in the comments. Type in the comment, call in 607-242-1582. Tell me, Mike, you got it right. No, Mike, you got it wrong. I think it's about adults. They're just looking out for people. Okay, tell me why. Am I missing something? Is there news that I'm not catching on this? Because, by the way, Kamala Harris is a miserable elected official. And throughout this conversation, and there is a video of it, but I was reading it through and listening to what she's talking about. And one, even though she gets pissed off and she's upset with Margaret Brennan about Joe Manchin, she's trying to avoid as much as she can. No, it's not Joe Manchin. He's not the important thing. Build Back Better will happen. It just takes some time. Even though Joe Biden's been in the Senate forever, even though she was in the Senate, they're supposed to have friends in the Democratic Party to make these things happen, and it's not going to work. Don't worry about it. It's okay, because it's about the evil Republicans. The Republicans are stopping. No, they're not. Kirsten Sinema is a Democrat. Joe Manchin is a Democrat. They recognize that this is a horrible deal. And Democrats beating up on them, chasing them into, remember, these Democrats, these progressives, were chasing Senator Sinema into a women's bathroom, live streaming, as they screamed at her and threatened her. And that's supposed to make you say, hey, my party's fantastic. This is a great thing. We're winners. I've got to vote for that now. No. That's not convincing someone through an argument and having a superior position that says that this makes sense. It's bullying tactics. It's coercion. It's a crime. A crime. And that's why she's so terrible. And that's why we're having such a bad reaction to this. Because it's not just in the United States. It's not just what's happening in Florida. It's not just what's happening in Arizona. And I'm going to get to Arizona in a second. There's a lot of stuff happening in Arizona. It's not just what's happening in New York and California and Michigan and Illinois. These things are affecting around the world. And they're affecting a lot of people around the world. Like Russia, which we've been covering for a couple of weeks now. Talking about Russia, where right now the big news is Russia, 10,000 Russian troops have left from the border of the Ukraine. Isn't that great news? And that's the headline. More than 10,000 Russian troops return to their bases after drills on the border of the Ukraine. Except it's 100,000 Russians on the border of the Ukraine. 100,000. That's 90,000. At the best case scenario, 90,000 Russian troops and tanks are on the border of the Ukraine trying to take it over right this second. The fact that 10,000 went away doesn't mean anything. That's not meaningful. The 90,000 troops that are still on the Ukraine border is meaningful. And it means that Joe Biden has failed. Joe Biden, who just this week, and just as was in the conversation with Kamala Harris today, they're talking about this. They're like, well, we're going to give sanctions against Russia. You've tried that already. Didn't work. You tried that under the Obama administration. It didn't work. 2014. And what was the answer? Appeasement. We gave the Crimea to the Russians. We appeased them because the sanctions didn't work. And so Russia is back with another weak person in the White House saying, well, you appeased me last time, give me more land. Because that's what the Biden-Harris administration think is the answer. Because they think, oh, we'll try sanctions. Sanctions don't work. They didn't work the first time. They're not working right now. And the fact that 10,000 troops left doesn't mean anything when there's another 90,000 still there. Still saying, give us the land. And we know for a fact that the Biden-Harris administration are in the middle of trying to have negotiations to actually decide how much land to give to Russia. They've already told the Ukraine, as we've reported 2 weeks ago, they told the Ukraine, consider giving up some of the land. Give up your nation to Russia just so that Russia will quiet down. Does that sound like leadership to you? Do you understand why people in South Florida are saying that Kamala does nothing and she's useless and horrible? Because I got something else about that will show you why. But I want you to understand, this is having an international impact. Joe Biden ran in 2020. The world was looking forward to it. He said, I know Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin's a murderer, and I will stand up to him, and he will back down. Tell that to the Ukraine. Ask the people in the Ukraine about that right now. Do they see Vladimir Putin backing down at all? Or is he laughing in the face of the Biden-Harris administration as he has troops and he's demanding that they pay him in land and guarantee that he's going to get everything that he wants or else? And he doesn't care because he wins either way. He gets more land and he gets the Ukraine either way. Ms. K says, it's about both. But if you don't provide effective health care, going back to my question about the pandemic, Ms. K goes on to say, if you don't provide effective health care, you will have no teachers and no health care providers to hold them accountable. I understand that point of view, and it's interesting. But here's the thing. I would understand that, and I would agree with that, Ms. K, if we were talking about the pandemic having a 20% mortality rate. It doesn't. It has less than, it has a 1% mortality rate that is targeted almost entirely on those 70 or older with pre-existing conditions. Children aren't being affected by that. Adults, by and large, are not being affected by that. If you're under the age of 70 and don't have pre-existing conditions, really, it doesn't matter. The healthcare isn't changing. You will likely get the pandemic and you will go on with your life, period. So it's not about effective healthcare. It's not. Because this isn't making people better. The government's actions, the government saying you have to wear a mask, that doesn't stop you from getting the pandemic. It never has. That's a scientific fact. And it's not, and we know this because look at the numbers. We've seen them around the world. It's not changing things. You look at, 93% of Israel is masked and also have gotten the jab. And they're just as affected as the United States. In fact, same thing with the United Kingdom. 83% of the population completely vaccinated. They're looking at lockdowns, and they intermittently have had more lockdowns than the United States. And they have the same impact as we're having here. This isn't about healthcare. This is about how do you manage a crisis politically. This is about politics. Because none of their actions are affecting the virus itself. Because it's a virus, it's nature, it happens. They're not actually changing anything. Making 5-year-olds and those under 5 years old to get a jab isn't going to make them safer because they are literally the safest group of people in the world. They have the least likely chance and the lowest numbers of death in the world. That's a fact. So we're not making them safer. We're not making their lives better. We're adding more stress and more conditioning on them. See, I don't know if that makes sense to you, Ms. K. And I hope I'm explaining myself well. If I'm not, please tell me. If it doesn't make sense to you, I'll try and make it make sense. But if you disagree with me, just think, well, no, that's just not the case. Okay, I can respect that too. And do you think it's more important? Let me ask, and I'm not meaning this to you, Ms. K, directly, but to everyone. I want people to understand. Is everything we're doing right now, is it worth teaching kids that they do not need to critically think. They just need to comply. That they just need to do what the government tells them, even when what the government is telling them isn't actually affecting their lives and it isn't making their life better. That's a big question. And as we were saying, so it's true when we're talking about health workers in New York State. New York State has actually made it worse for people. But how about, let's look at Russia or Ukraine. They're making it worse for everyone. They're not making it better. We have guaranteed that we will not go, coming back to Russia and the Ukraine border, the United States has said explicitly, we will not send troops. We will limit our reaction. We will not defend this nation. Just like we didn't defend our own people in Afghanistan, where we abandoned 450 to 2,000 people, reports are 2,000 people, Americans, not Afghans, not Afghan women, Americans were abandoned completely. And we're not willing to protect them. We're not willing to protect the people in Ukraine. Then what threat are we actually giving to China and to Russia and to Iran and North Korea? What are we really telling them? What about the people of Taiwan? What are they seeing? I want you to understand, this is what kids are being taught, and this is what we're telling the world. We're teaching the world that under a weak president, under a weak government, Joe Biden, and the progressive ideology, we are unwilling to take care of our own people, and that is a fact. That is indisputable. We know for a fact today that somewhere between 450 and 2,000 Americans were abandoned, and we were lied to by the Biden-Harris administration, the biggest lie of 2021, which is underreported by the news media because they don't want the embarrassment. But we know for a fact the numbers have been confirmed, even by the government itself, very quietly. The White House, the Pentagon have confirmed this themselves. At least 479 Americans. Minimally, we have heard from organizations, could be 2,000 Americans. We know they have lied. We know they have failed. And we know that we're not willing to step in and help the Ukraine. We're not willing to help people around the world. What does that say to Taiwan, that relies on the United States to keep China from overrunning that country and throwing their leaders into a gulag? What does that say to the people who are suffering in China, like the Uyghurs, because China doesn't believe in their religious beliefs and is therefore punishing them? What does that say to our allies in France and in the United Kingdom that are suffering because of the CRT, the intersectionality, the gender identity politics that is being exported from the United States over to their country? What are we teaching the next generation? Besides telling our kids, do whatever the government says, and teaching the kids around the world, don't trust America. It's a really terrifying thought to hear, but that's what we're teaching the world. And in 10 years, you're going to feel the impact of that. In 10 years, when these kids are able to vote and the kids in the other parts of the world were old enough to take leadership positions in their governments, as they start becoming adults that are ingrained in their political systems, we're going to see the impact. And you may not like the way that's going to work out. Jason mentions they're teaching them how to be critically racist, which is one of the things. It's an application of the critical race theory. It's like when I was at SUNY Broome, and they literally had a program funded by the state to teach kids how to be more racist. Of course, they said, no, we're helping racism. We're helping to fix this. We need people to understand. And you understand by telling them that white people are evil and that black people are victims. That was the program that they had. That was at SUNY Broome. I covered it live. You can see the video. I'm sorry. It's horrible. They're trying to say, well, we're trying to make things better. They're paving a path to hell. Saying, oh, well, this will make things better. because we're going to be more racist. The results are not positive. And we're seeing this. I'll give you an example. Arizona. Okay. This week, there was an event in Arizona. They called it America Fest. Turning Point USA is an organization which is at the Binghamton University School and across the nation, many schools. It is a conservative Republican organization to promote conservative Republican ideas. It's kind of like BLM. It's kind of like Citizen Action. It's kind of like Antifa. It's kind of like Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. There are a dozen left-leaning organizations I can point to that are on college campuses right now. There are very few Republican or even right-leaning organizations. Turning Point USA is one of them. So therefore, they are demonized on college campuses. And here it is, MSNBC, major news media, decided to tell everyone, this is the article they put out about Turning Point USA going to an event, which is right-leaning, America Fest, which is like a small version of CPAC. And this is how MSNBC, under Joy Reid by Jahan Jones, this is how they had to describe that to you. The ultra-conservative advocacy group Turning Point USA, geared towards young Americans and known to pal around with far-right extremists, has been holding a days-long America Fest conference in Arizona. Turning Point USA is Phoenix-based and devotedly Trumpian organization that embraces the worst characteristics of the disgraced president and the Republican Party he leads. Really? Really? Is that the way that you start off? Does that sound objective to you at all? He started off with, for decades, Arizonians have had a front row seat to the nation's social and political fights. This doesn't sound like an objective news article. And in fact, it's not an objective news article. Conservatives are seeing Arizona as a breeding ground for extremists. That's not objective. There's not an objective word in that. By the way, this is not an opinion. This is not an opinion piece. This is MSNBC telling you that this is the news. They're trying to tell you that this is the fact of the world at this time. This is not an opinion piece. This is promoted by MSNBC. An attack piece from a far left extremist, Mr. Jahan Jones, who works for Joy Reid, is he loves the Black Obituary Project. He's far left. He hates conservatives. He hates Republicans, apparently, from his wording, from the way he's speaking about this. He's attacking people, including Kyle Rittenhouse and Paul Gosar and Andy Biggs. And he's assuming that they must be an extremist because they just don't agree with his point of view. That should trouble you. That should trouble us all. That the mainstream major media is willing to put out an opinion piece that is hyper-partisan, and they say, well, that's just the regular news. That's just news. That's just normal. That's just a fact. What do you mean there's another neutral? That is neutral. That is what MSNBC is telling you right now. That's what they're telling the kids, and that's what they're telling everyone who watches the show. That to call people who have a different point of view extremists, and to label an entire state as extremists because they have a different point of view, that's not considered even commentary. That's not an opinion. MSNBC is presenting it as fact. They want you to think that is a fact. That if you do not believe in the progressive ideology, that you are an extremist and that you are a Trumpian person, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. President Trump isn't in office, hasn't been for 11 months, and the nation is worse off because of it. That's not Trumpian, that's economics. Look at the inflation rate. Look at the national debt. Look at our international policies. Look for the Americans that were abandoned and still are abandoned in Afghanistan. You can tell me, Mike, I disagree. You can tell me, Mike, I just think you're wrong. You're missing the boat here. You don't understand. Okay. Tell me, how am I missing the boat? What am I not understanding? Honestly. And we have to deal with these things now because they only get worse the longer that we don't pay attention. The longer that no one points a light at it and says, why are we allowing news media programs to come out and put out opinion and state it as fact? Especially when that opinion purposefully separates Americans, divides the nation, and demonizes individuals for having independent thoughts. That's absolutely incredible. And that's dangerous. And it's dangerous because there's a lot of things we should be talking about that are very important to talk about. I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about. And this goes back to Kamala Harris, and it goes to the Biden-Harris administration. Did you know that there was a terrorist that was caught in Arizona on the 21st, 5 days ago? 5 days ago, there was a terrorist who got caught, or excuse me, I want to restate that. An alleged terrorist was caught at the border of Arizona trying to get into the United States. Did you know that? 21-year-old from Saudi Arabia. The Daily Mail labels him as a terrorist. Other news media says he is a suspected terrorist. This individual is on no-fly lists. So how do you get from Saudi Arabia to Mexico to come into the United States through the open border that we have there? That's a big question because he's not supposed to be flying on any planes. But yet he was able to get from Saudi Arabia to Mexico to walk across the United States border because there is nothing stopping him. Kamala Harris has never even been to the Arizona border to say anything about it. She has failed as the czar or the representative of the Biden-Harris administration on the southern border, as she was put in place to do back in March of 2021. And there's something that's very important about this guy. Do you see that, what he's wearing, that jacket? And this is going to be very important to the people in New York, in upstate New York. If you're in upstate New York, I want you to look at this jacket and I want you to tell me if you notice something that's very, very important about it. How about this? I want to show it to you a little more closely. How about that? That image right here. Central Oneida County Volunteer Ambulance Corps. This suspected terrorist crossed the United States border wearing a New York Oneida County jacket so that he wouldn't be noticed, so that he couldn't be stopped, so that he could deceive all of the police and the authorities to get in. Upstate New York. New York, the bluest of blue states, being led by progressives at almost every level of our government. When terrorists are thinking about how can I get into the United States, what will let me get through the United States to be able to go and do whatever crazy things terrorists do, they're thinking, oh, let me get upstate New York fake identification so that people won't think about it. They won't question me. There's so many levels of this. And I do know that CBS News, WKTV in New York State, as well as the Daily Mail, in looking this over, they have identified that everyone says no one knows how this guy, this suspected terrorist, got that jacket and was able to enter the United States. But we got lucky that out of the 1.5 million illegal aliens that have crossed the United States border, that have entered the United States, that this guy got stopped. And now we know that there are a bunch of terrorists who think the best way to enter the United States is to wear upstate New York uniforms to be able to get into this country. Because New York State is a progressive state, because it's pro-open borders. I don't know, maybe. Because there are people who sympathize with it in Oneonta, New York. People like, I don't know, former Congressman Anthony Brindisi. Democrats in the Democratic control over our New York State government. Is that why he picked upstate New York? Is that why he picked New York? It's so scary to think about that. And this is why people in southern Florida, Spanish speakers in southern Florida, are saying Kamala does nothing. She is useless. She is bad. That's why we hear so many people say Joe Biden is useless and he is hurting America. Let me ask you, did you hear about this? Did you know a terrorist got caught with the uniform of upstate New York trying to enter the United States? Did you hear about this story? Because I don't think most people did. Because I think that's really important. I think it's critically important that we do hear about this. Why isn't this bigger news? Why aren't people asking questions about this? Are they that desperate to protect the Biden-Harris administration that we're not going to say, hey, hang on, there have been at least 3 terrorists. According to the Daily Mail, it is confirmed that so far this year, at least 3 people now, 3 suspected terrorists have been caught at the southern border of the United States. That our border is so open that terrorists are walking across, something that we have been warning about since January, that we need to, actually long before that, but since the Biden-Harris administration took over, we have been begging that someone pays attention to our southern border and closes that border. Because if 3 people were caught out of 1.5 million that we know of, how many got through that we have yet to catch? How many times have terrorists been wearing uniforms of California, of New York, of Illinois, of Michigan, the bluest of blue states? How many of those uniforms of various government agencies have they worn to cross the southern border and come into the United States? How many are running around in upstate New York, in California, in Michigan, in Illinois, in Baltimore, and Maryland? How many of them are running around right now in uniforms of our government and they actually are terrorists? It's a big question. It's an important question. Because if it's happened once, how many more times might it have happened? Tina mentions the left seems to be perfectly fine with terrorists and criminals. It's decent American citizens that they hate. You know, I have trouble disagreeing with that. That seems to be the policy of the progressive left. I mean, that's the uniform, folks. That's the uniform. That's what a terrorist used to come into America unchallenged. We got lucky that we caught them. We got lucky. They didn't know how many, and we know there's at least been 2 others that we got lucky and we caught them. Because out of the 1.5 million people who have crossed into the United States through our southern border that we know of, almost none of them have been checked. That doesn't even count the 52,000 Afghans that we brought into the United States right now that we know nothing about. As we have covered on this program before, and we have detailed for you, there have been Afghans who have killed people in Florida that lied to us, that we know nothing about. And it was only after the murder that they committed that this Afghan refugee was identified as a criminal and should never have been allowed into the United States. Same thing with the ones that we saw in 4 other states, as we have reported. Meanwhile, there are 52,000 Afghan refugees that we know nothing about that are being introduced into upstate New York. They're going into several states, actually, across the country, but over 1,000 of them in upstate New York alone. And we know nothing about them. We have no idea who they are or what they believe or why they got onto a plane to come to the United States. They could be members of Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, I don't know. They could be innocent people just trying to escape from Taliban, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda. Could be, I don't know. It could cost us money, I don't know. And in fact, neither does anyone else in New York State government, neither does anyone in the federal government. I know, I have been asking them since September 1st. Since September 1st, as we have shown on this channel, we have asked members of government to tell us, who are these people? Have background checks been done? Have they been vaccinated? Is it going to cost us money to have them integrated into our communities? Which communities are they going into? They can't answer these questions. They have no idea. They're just doing it. Much like they're just doing everything else. Spend trillions of dollars. Doesn't matter. Force people to be mandated to do what the government says. Doesn't matter. Make deals with Iran and countries that want to kill us. It doesn't matter because they don't think about the consequences of what they're doing. Fire 34,000 doctors. It doesn't matter because they're not thinking about the consequences. Folks, we have to think about these consequences because they are adding up and they are adding up fast. I am absolutely sure that there were not just 3 terrorists who decided Kamala Harris isn't checking the southern border. No one else is checking the southern border. 12,000 out of 17,000 Haitians got walked into the United States. Why can't we get into the United States too? I don't think it was just 3 terrorists in all of 2021 that made the decision that the United States southern border is wide open. And I don't think only 3 of them or only one of them decided, hey, I'll wear a disguise from upstate New York, one of the most progressive capitals in the United States, one of the leading progressive strongholds of the United States, because that makes people less likely to pay attention to me. I don't think there was only one guy out of 1.5 million that said, hey, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. When we're fighting all of the Taliban, all of ISIS, all of Al-Qaeda, all of the people that are backed by Iran, the Houthis in Yemen, China. Are you kidding me, folks? Come on. Now, if you disagree with this, tell me why. Mike, you misunderstand completely. There was only 3. We're so good at, our border is so secure that all 3 of the terrorists that decided in the entire year of 2021 under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, only 3 terrorists in the world figured, let's try and see if we can get through. Because it's so secure, they knew they'd get caught. Maybe that's the argument you want to make. I would love to hear that. Miss K says, I get your angle is leadership. Yes. Well, it's not just leadership, Miss K. My angle is accountability. I think that's the biggest thing. Yes, leadership is absolutely important. We need someone to say, I think this is the best thing we can do for America. Absolutely. I also need them to be accountable so that when they screw up, they say, we are wrong. Let's fix the problem. Like, hey, Kamala, you haven't talked to anyone in the world about the southern border of the United States in the last 6 months. It's been 6, maybe 8 months since the last time she talked to a world leader. In fact, the last meeting they were having, she went and had ice cream in New Jersey with her buddy, Senator Cory Booker, instead of going to a meeting about our southern border. And she suffered no consequences for this. Democrats are trying to tell you, no, she's a great leader. Don't you get it? She's fantastic. She's so fantastic, she has avoided every meeting and every effort to try and close the border. And she's doing nothing to try and close the border. Nothing. So not only is it leadership, which is lacking, because Joe Biden isn't doing any better on this issue, it's not just the leadership, it's also the accountability. To hold them accountable to what have you done? What are the consequences? Okay, even if you want to say everything that Kamala Harris, the Cory Booker and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, the entire Democratic Congress, as well as the Biden-Harris administration have completely failed on our southern border. Okay, then why aren't they trying something different? Why aren't they doing something to be accountable? Because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, they're still saying, open up the border. Just open up the border. Make it even more open. Kamala Harris has got nothing to say. She won't even talk about the issue. She avoids it like the plague. When Jen Psaki, the Speaker of the White House, was asked about this, said, well, she's working on it. Don't worry, she's got it under control. Not naming a single specific, not telling us anything she's actually done, not telling us what she's attempting to do, what is in the plan. There is zero accountability there. We can't run a government like that. And the problems with that are creeping into our nation from so many directions. Because we have leaders who are disconnected from the public, they are not being held accountable, and they have no concept of the consequences of what they're doing. That's what I believe, Missy. Now, Miss K, you may think I am wrong, and that's okay. You may think parts of what I've said are wrong. That's okay. If you do, tell me what you think is wrong. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe I have misunderstood something. Obviously, I am a conservative Republican. I disagree with many Republicans on how to be a conservative Republican. Just ask my local Republican Party in Broome County. Ask B. Joy Data, the chairman. We have differences in what we believe it is to be a conservative Republican. Fair enough. So maybe I'm missing something. If you disagree, or if anyone disagrees, let's have that conversation. Let's have that conversation for America. Because I can tell you, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans who have, if not the same, a similar point of view that I am expressing right now, and they have been expressing it at events like America Fest, like at Turning Point USA, like at so many channels on YouTube. Lots of us are saying this. Gothics, Just One Guy, Young Ripa, so many others are making these comments, and what, we're just being ignored? There's a problem there. Jason mentions the consequences will be a Patriot Act 1,000 times more intrusive to weed them out. Well, I don't want to see I don't like the Patriot Act. I have problems with the Patriot Act. I don't believe in secret courts. I have a problem with secret courts. We have enough problems with the open courts we have right now. We can't get that right. And we want to have a secret court? No, I have problems with that. I don't like spying on American citizens like we did under the Obama administration with the NSA recording every phone call in America, not the world, not foreigners, Americans, that they made a duplicate copy of everybody's internet data. They grabbed it around the world and they downloaded it. That's a fact. It happened. The NSA did that. I believe it was 2015 when we found out. That's a problem. I don't want more of that. I think our government and our country is better off when we have less of that. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Mike, that doesn't make sense. Maybe there's more dangers in the world that I'm not thinking of. Maybe those dangers are requiring this. Maybe. I don't see that because I don't think the problem is whether or not we have a Patriot Act that allows the government to tap our phone lines, that there are, as a fact, the NSA, the Department of Justice, DOJ, and several organizations are watching this program. That is a fact. They have been doing it for many years. I've had a file with the NSA since I was back in the military, and they've been following me for many years because I've been very outspoken, especially over the last 15 years. That has always been, and regardless, they've been following everybody else too. Does that make America safer? No. Why? Because this terrorist was able to walk into America in a border that was completely and absolutely wide open and unsecure, and was wearing government identification, state identification, to allow him to try and better facilitate integrating into our country to damage us. The Patriot Act isn't helping. It didn't stop that. It's not going to. I have a problem with it. But we do need more accountability. We do need more politicians who are paying attention to the public and not politics to stop worrying about their power. By the way, Jillian, hello. It's good to see you, Jill. I'm not sure with what that means, Jill. You have, is it Virginia WR Tech? I don't know what that means. Can you tell me what that means, Jill? Because I'm lost on that. I don't know what VAWR is. If anyone else knows what Jill's talking about here, it looks like Virginia WR .tech. I don't know what that means. Virginia Wretch? I don't know. And you have different size spell. I don't know what that means. If someone knows what it means, tell me. Maybe I'm just not up on these things. Maybe it's a young thing. I don't know. But folks, I want to hear your voices. I'm desperate to hear what you think, because I could be seeing these things and I could be completely wrong. But I know people are upset about these things. We demand to have action. We want our politicians to act, but we want them to act in a way that is meaningful and has consequence. And when we don't see it, that's where the problem starts. And we have to hold them accountable. I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about. Remember 2 weeks ago, I covered that there was a protest which was usurped by the progressive leaders of tomorrow. It was supposed to be a women's march to protest, as the community has protested, the allegation of sexual assault of women at a business, at a group of businesses in downtown Binghamton. And so women gathered together, men, everyone gathered together, and progressive leaders of tomorrow decided to try and have a recruitment drive, usurping the event and turning it into racial politics instead of supporting women and denouncing any sexual assault against women, which is upsetting and very depressing. And I covered that live stream that hundreds of people have seen it since. And we know that there was an ongoing investigation about this. And we know that the current mayor of Binghamton, Mayor Rich David, a person who I know, has stated that, hey, there was an investigation going on. No, there are no federal agencies that are involved. A lie that was told by the progressive leaders of tomorrow. Not true. This was being investigated by local police, and the investigation is trying to collect the information to go to court. And we know from The DA, who I also happen to know, he's waiting. He's ready. Once the investigation goes, they've got evidence, they will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. If a crime has been committed, if it can be proven, they're going to go and they're going to go after this full power. But now we're finding out that, well, there's been no arrest yet. And I want to ask you, do you think there's no arrest yet because the government has failed? Or like the progressive leaders tomorrow, they say it's because there's corruption? Or is it because there's not enough evidence yet? See, if we live in a country where evidence is important, everyone is presumed to be innocent. Because if they're not presumed to be innocent, well, then we turn into Venezuela. Then we turn into North Korea. Then we become a horrible nation, not a nation of freedom. Because if you're guilty before you're innocent, that's a problem. Again, this is why I have a problem with the red flag laws. That's why I have a problem with a lot of the pandemic mandates. You're presumed guilty without ever committing a crime. That's a problem. Like at the beginning of the show when we talked about the gentleman who said, let's go, Brandon, to the president, to Joe Biden himself. And then he's getting punished for it. His business is getting beat up. No, we can't do that. Because what I understand, and by the way, if you do have information about what happened allegedly to these women at the downtown businesses in Binghamton, if you have evidence, if you have proof, notify the police. Please contact the local community because the police are looking for the evidence. They're looking for any information. They're taking this as seriously as they can. They're continuing to look at all the evidence that's being presented, all the information that they are being given. But let me be clear. Just listening to someone say, looking online and having someone say they're just guilty isn't proof. And that's an accusation. That's not proof. And that doesn't mean we destroy someone's life and their businesses because someone online said, well, I don't like them. There's a big difference. Officially, Jason's asking, were there any updates on the investigation of the alleged sexual assault? And I want to say that at this moment, and I'll get to Tina's question in a second, but at this moment, I know that they are looking for more evidence. They are looking for more information to be able to potentially move forward. That's what they need. And it's not that anyone's stopping it. It's not that there's some kind of conspiracy. You need evidence. And if you don't have evidence, you can't go forward. If there is a crime, I want them to have the evidence and I want the crime to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And if it isn't, we can't demonize people for lack of evidence. That doesn't help. That makes things worse. Will there be? I don't know. I know that they're looking for more evidence. And I've known that for a while. I've known for a while they're looking for more evidence. So if anyone has evidence, fantastic. Tina mentions, yep, I walked away from the group as they were promoting vandalism and criminal behavior. Speaking about the live stream that we showed, the Women's March that was usurped by progressive leaders of tomorrow, turning it into a racial protest versus supporting women of sexual assault. And so she says, she walked away from the group when they were promoting vandalism and criminal behavior because at the end of the protest, there was crimes that were committed. Vandalism did happen. Destruction of property did happen. Several threats of violence did occur. And we did record that and stream that live where several threats were made to businesses and to individuals. It's a shame they allowed plot progressive leaders tomorrow and BLM to overtake it. And I believe they did that because they didn't realize who they were dealing with. From what I understand from my sources, they were looking to create a rally, but they had never done that before. Individuals at plot heard about that, offered their help, and then took over the entire group and the event, and have kicked out many of the people who initially started who wanted to make a statement for women and the safety of women, and those individuals no longer exist in the organization because plot wants to make this about race. That's the evidence and information I have. I think the police, Tina goes on to say, I think the police need time to actually gather evidence and investigate. That's true. If they bring a case to court and lose because of the lack of evidence, then the people can't be tried again because of double jeopardy. That is absolutely correct. Which is why, especially in something where it starts off with an accusation online and there's very little evidence, that's why it's so important to get as much evidence as possible, and why I say, if you have evidence about this, please contact the police. Talking about it online will never get a result. Remember the women that were during the Obama administration? Michelle Obama had hashtag free the women when a bunch of women were captured in Africa and were being held against their will. Free the girls did nothing. There were a bunch of Americans who were kidnapped in Haiti. There was a hashtag free the Americans in Haiti. Did nothing. Online, just because you have a hashtag, it isn't going to bring justice. Just because you get on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or DLive and you say, this person's guilty, doesn't mean they're guilty, nor that they will be punished. If there is evidence, please bring it to the authorities. Let them do their job. Let them bring the case forward. I know that they would be happy to prosecute if evidence exists. If they can prove it in court, they will be happy to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. But they got to get the evidence. And I'm not saying they aren't getting the evidence. I'm saying they're still getting evidence. And all the evidence that helps, all the better. Because God knows none of us want them to walk out of this because, well, there wasn't quite enough evidence. Like they probably did it, but we don't have enough evidence. That's the worst thing that could happen. But yeah, I'm still following the story. As you can tell, I am still speaking to people. I'm still following. How many depositions have been taken is asked by Jason about this sexual assault. I don't have an answer on that. And even if I did, I couldn't speak about it. That's something I can't mention. Even if I did have, not to say that I do know that answer, but even if I did, I couldn't answer it. And no one who, if anyone who would know that answer, should not answer it either. It could technically jeopardize any potential case by leaking that. That would not be in the best interest of justice. Florinda Wilhelm. Am I getting hit with spam? VASK.tech. Yep. So we got some spammers. It always happens. Just so you know, it looks like that anyone who's sending in these one-word messages with .tech, they're spam, it looks like. The names don't look real, and none of that makes sense. So do not go to any site that they would put up. So if you see it, and they're going to try and do the scams as best they can. I don't have an administrator. I do this live. So when you see something like that, instantly blacklist that. Do not go to those sites. Do not support that. That's just a spam. It's a bot. It happens. Too bad I can't stop that. It's probably people from Plot. No, they're not brave enough to come onto this program. Quite honestly, they're not. I think the one time one of their members tried to contact us, all they did is scream. They're just scream slurs. That's all they do. Because they believe in trying to be, they're bullies. They try to be. And they think that'll work. So we're talking about a bunch of things that, we're talking about responsibility in our government. We're talking about accountability. We're talking about effective government. These are all important issues, and they all matter. Let's talk about something else you probably haven't heard about. Did you know that Sebastian Gorka, who worked as an advisor under the Trump administration, was subpoenaed because he was in January 6th. The January 6th committee in Congress were trying to find out whether or not an insurrection occurred. They've gone to Sebastian Gorka, and they've gone after his information. And it's very hard to find credible news sources on this. Because if you look for this, where is it? Oh, there it is. If you're looking for this, you're not going to see the news. You're not seeing this. And I will update this live so everyone can see it. Sebastian Gorka, what is the latest news from Sebastian Gorka? Do you see anywhere that they are saying on Google that they're letting you know that he has been subpoenaed, his records, his phone lines have been subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, that he is being investigated? Because when you look through the news, you will see everything about how he's evil, he's bad, he's Trump, but you're not seeing a single article saying that he got all of his data from his phone was just grabbed by, or attempted to be grabbed by the January 6th crowd, the committee. And that should trouble you. That should be a warning shot to you, that when you're searching for this, when you're searching the person's name and you're looking through the news and you're trying to find information, and I am doing this live with you, and you're not seeing any of the major news media, reporting on this issue. It is so hard to find that if you didn't know it happened, you wouldn't know it happened. And why is this a big deal? Because it's potentially illegal. You see, Sebastian Gorka, even though he worked for the Trump administration, to do so, to be an advisor of the White House, you have to have a security clearance, a rather high security clearance. He still has that security clearance. It was never taken away from him, which means that some of the information on his phone could be secret information, cleared information that's not cleared for anyone to have, that the committee can't have it and they can't publicly publish it. They can't even speak about it in some cases. It is quite possible. Which means that they are violating the law. You can't just grab someone's secret or potentially secret information. Remember Hillary Clinton? You know what she was in trouble about? She wasn't in trouble about the emails that she didn't submit. She was in trouble because some of those emails were secret and they were being put out into the world, that they was unsecure, and that she was transmitting secret information unsecured. That is a violation of law. That is national security. That is a problem. So for the January 6th committee to do this, they're potentially committing a crime because there is potentially secret information that they're trying to access that they don't have a right to access. And it could become public. And that's a problem. On top of which, and I think this is the bigger news about this. And again, it's very difficult to find this story from a absolutely considered credible source, although the Daily Beast is one. And where is it? He mentions, here it is. No crime is mentioned in the subpoena from the January 6th committee. What am I accused of doing? Because I was meant to be speaking on the same day at the Supreme Court, but didn't because the president's speech went too long. That's my crime in America. Speaking. You chose the wrong enemy. Speaking about Nancy Pelosi and Representative Adam Schiff, a gentleman who is more than happy to lie to the American people. And if you don't remember when he did that, Russia collusion. He went on MSNBC and CNN every night telling the American people that he had proof, actually had proof of Russia collusion, and therefore President Trump would be impeached. 3 years later, $30 million of your taxes spent later He no longer talks about it. No proof was ever made. It didn't happen. It's not real. That's just the facts. 3 different investigations, 2 of them by Democrats, to make sure that they could find everything in the world they could find, not one bit of evidence about the collusion they claimed. Although there were some that connected the Russians to Hillary Clinton and that there was a plan there, but nothing on Republicans, nothing on Trump. So that's Adam Schiff. He's deceptive to start with. But now Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are trying to punish Sebastian Gorka for not speaking at an event that he was supposed to speak at. Folks, are you hearing where our government is going? Do you see the trend that we keep seeing here? Punishing people for non-crimes. No accountability in our government. And the government just assuming powers that it just does not have. That's just insane. Sebastian Gorka is being attacked. And let me be clear about this. It doesn't matter if you think January 6, 2020 was an attempted insurrection or that it wasn't, which it wasn't. But even if you think it was, that has nothing to do with what we're speaking about right now. They are investigating a man for not speaking at an event. Where is the crime? Why are they investigating him? Why in the world would he be involved? What is his reason for being investigated besides his political ideology? Besides the fact that they are trying to embarrass him and they are trying to drum up emotions to hide the fact that the economy sucks, that the international policy of the Biden-Harris administration sucks, and that we are getting into a more dangerous world because of the weakness of the Biden-Harris administration. That people are being abused and disserved because of the lack of accountability of our elected leaders, like the appointed governor, Kathy Hochul, and the absolute absence of conversation from individuals like Congressman Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District. Why are we punishing someone, investigating them, which is going to cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for this, for all of the information you're trying to do, for this investigation into this American citizen, because he didn't speak at an event? How is that a crime? Seriously, I want to hear what people think here. Tell me if you think, I'm trying to understand this, folks. Law enforcement today also covered this event. They also covered it. It's a political battle. But again, besides the fact that he has a security clearance, which makes this problematic to start with, he hasn't done anything. He didn't do anything on January 6th. There's no evidence of him doing anything on January 6th. There's nothing to connect. He didn't speak at an event where people were speaking. Not people who were breaking into, who are being let into the Congress. Not them. He wasn't anywhere near there. So why is this? I don't understand this. I do not understand this. It does not make sense. And I would love to hear someone who says, it was an insurrection. First, okay, define insurrection. Because the definition of insurrection doesn't apply. Not one person of the 700 people who have been arrested and charged with crimes, not one has been charged with insurrection, which is a federal crime. And the definition of which, I think I covered it last week, does not apply. Not once. Not one person has been charged with that. Not once. So it wasn't an insurrection. Otherwise, someone would have been charged with insurrection. At least one person would have gotten that criminal charge. Not one in 700 people. Not one. It's not an insurrection. Not legally, not even by ideology. Not to say that there weren't crimes that were committed, and not to say that people shouldn't be punished, although they are being overly punished, in our opinion, based on the time and the manner that this is being done, but that's another discussion. But here we are And the troubling thing is that we are now seeing people who have no connection to this, who committed no crime, who didn't even speak, they weren't even present, and now they're being punished. And here's the thing. If it's happening to Sebastian Gorka, who has a security clearance, who is very popular, who is well known, who is richer than most, and if it's happening to him, do you think you're going to do any better? Do you think you're any safer? If someone came after you, and it looks like we're getting into a more and more divided nation where people are attacking each other over things like this, where are you going to stand? Who's going to stand up for you when the IRS decides that they want to look through the 80,000 IRS agents that are now being hired to go and look at every single transaction you make because you have a bank account that has more than $10,000 in transactions in a year, which means the poor, when they're going through your transactions, yours, and they're finding out and they don't like what they see and they decide to audit you. And then they decide, oh, well, you know what? You gave money or you listened to a podcast or you liked a tweet or something on Facebook, a meme that you saw, and that means you're an extremist, just like the ones in Arizona, because they decided to have an event and talk about politics. Because it's the wrong kind of politics, you're now an extremist and now you need to be punished. Who's going to stand up for you? If they're able to go after someone like Gorka, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's a good guy or not, doesn't matter. And it seems Missy K does not think that it was insurrection, if I understand you correctly, Miss K, excuse me. And that's my thing. Even, especially if it isn't an insurrection, because no one has been charged with insurrection. Therefore, it isn't. If even one person was arrested and charged with insurrection, okay, we can have that discussion. There you go. You've got some evidence. If no one has been charged with insurrection and no one falls under that guideline as it states in the law, then this is not an insurrection. And we're now punishing people for not even being at the event. What are they going to do to the average American citizen just because you don't have the right politics? And if you think, well, I'm a Democrat, that doesn't make you safe. If you think, well, I'm a moderate, that's not going to make you safe. You're a libertarian. Even if you think, well, I'm a progressive, that's not going to make you safe because their rules change every day. And they go after their own on a regular basis. Because you're never progressive enough. Because if you happen to be a white progressive, well, you're evil. And if you happen to be a woman, well, you're not a trans woman. If you happen to be black or Hispanic, well, you're not gay. If you're black and Hispanic and a woman, well, you're not trans. There's always another thing. You're never at the top of the poll. You're never the most important one. And there's always someone willing to say, well, you didn't spend your entire life looking out for this small, tiny group of people who are now the thing today, the new fad, the new group that is being marginalized and has to be promoted. And by the way, vote for us because no one else will protect every one of these marginalized groups, which is a never-ending process. Meanwhile, as they constantly tell you, well, we have to protect, there has to be critical race theory, and there has to be intersectionality, and there has to be gender and identity politics, and we have to, that's the most important thing. And climate change is the most important thing. And on top of all that, there's everything else. That is the most important thing. They're all the most important thing. They can't all be the most important thing. And you can't do all of them. And voting is the most important thing. Americans vote. You're already voting. People aren't voting because they can't get to the voting booth. They're not voting because they don't want to vote, because they don't have belief in their politicians. Republican, conservative, libertarian, Democrat, progressive, doesn't matter. People don't believe in these people. We don't believe in them because they're ineffective. Most of them won't even speak to us. It's amazing, folks. And I know a lot of these politicians. I've been doing this 15 years, and thank God, I know we don't have the biggest subscriber base, but yeah, we've been doing it a long time. We've had lots of really members of Congress, congressional medal winners. We've had lots of important people and politicians at every level of government, from local to federal, on this program. And I can tell you, I talk with them all the time, and you'd be amazed how many of them are terrified to talk to you. They won't do an interview on this program, or they try and keep as few interviews as possible because they're afraid of being asked a question. They're terrified of it. I've had these conversations with them privately. They're terrified. The former Congressman Anthony Brindisi had a conversation with me. It was public. It wasn't recorded, but it was public. It was in front of a bunch of people. And he says, no, I'm not going to go on your show because you don't like my politics. That's it. He denied and didn't. Meanwhile, he was elected in a almost 50-50 race back in 2018 to represent Republicans as well as Democrats, but he didn't want to talk to any of the Republicans because he's afraid to answer anything that a Republican would ask. Well, that's not really representative, are you? Which is why Anthony Brindisi lost his race in 2020, and it's also the reason why Anthony Brindisi lost his race in 2021 to become a judge, because he's partisan as hell. But we have to treat every one of our politicians like that and hold them accountable. Ms. K says, I actually understand and agree if there is no leadership that has no pathways of a plan, you have no measurement to hold any government accountable. People have the right to be angry that governments are, and I think it cut you off there. Yeah, I agree with you, Ms. K. We have every right, and we should speak out about this, and we have to. Folks, I'm talking about the way to improve things. I'm showing you what's happening when we aren't speaking up, when we sit silently on the sidelines, when we don't complain, when we don't comment, when we let people like Plot or BLM or progressives like the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter that believes in violence, when we let these individuals just run a rampant and we don't hold them accountable, when we don't call them out, when we allow Kamala Harris to say, I'm in charge of the southern border and does nothing with it, if we don't hold them accountable, it only gets worse. Think about it. If we were holding Kamala Harris accountable, the news was speaking 6 months ago about the fact that she was doing absolutely nothing, not just say, oh, well, she's going to make one meeting in June. What about where are the results? Where's her plan? And every time that they've spoken to her since June, when she was supposed to be making this miraculous tour of South America, and we were supposed to say every month, not just once, but every month saying, Kamala Harris, you're supposed to be in charge. What's happening? Why are we still getting 200,000 people a month coming through our southern border? You have failed. Give us a plan. And if we don't ask her that, she's not doing it. Thus, we have 1.5 million people who came to our southern border this year since February. All under the Biden-Harris administration. That's her fault. That is her fault. From March going forward, that's her fault. Why? Because she has no plan. She did nothing. In fact, let me ask you, do you know what the plan is? Because I guess what? There isn't one. The border is open. There is no plan. I wish I could say there was. There isn't. There isn't even a bad plan. That's how bad things are. There isn't even a bad plan being offered by Kamala Harris. Its border is open, and we've got terrorists walking through it, and I already showed you the evidence that they're doing it, and they're disguising themselves as upstate New York residents and residents of other states that are progressive. That should scare you. That should scare you a lot. Because we're not holding them accountable. We're not making them say, this can't continue. And when we are not holding our government accountable, and that government is weak, That's when we see Russia step up and say, well, I'm going to grab some land in the Ukraine because you're not going to stop me. That's when we see China say, well, we're going to oppress people and we're going to throw them into gulags. They're going to disappear forever and we're going to take some land too, as they told Taiwan. And that's when we get to hear Iran say, we're going to build a nuclear weapon and you're going to pay for it, America. You're going to give us all the money we want as we build a missile that'll be able to reach from Iran to the United States so we can kill you. And if you think I'm wrong, not only look at the coverage we've done on Iran, look at the news from Iran itself. Listen to what Prime Minister Raisi has said directly to the United States about this. They want to kill you. And it doesn't matter whether you're progressive or not. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care if you're gay because they'll kill you for that. They don't care if you're a progressive. They'll kill you for that. They will kill you just because you're an American. They will kill you just because you don't believe what they believe. I mean, let's think about that, folks. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Mike, it's not nearly that bad. You just don't understand. It's way easier. Again, look, the news is saying thousands of troops have left the Ukraine and 100,000, but there were 100,000 troops on the border. And just like we said, the Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement in the operations for the Southern Military District, forces had taken place across a stream of southern regions, including Rostov, Krasnodar, and Crimea, a peninsula they seized in 2014. They're looking to grab more land because we're weak. And then we have Poland. Because it's not just happening in the United States. Hey, Agent Black. Good to see you. Merry Christmas to you and everyone in the United Kingdom. Thank you for joining us. We've been talking about a lot of stuff, including what's going on in the UK a little bit, talking about Russia, talking about Ukraine, talking about now Poland. So you may know some of this from the European side. You're one of our viewers from across the pond, and I'm happy to see you here. So, right now, as of December 8th, all of a sudden, everyone stopped talking about the Ukraine, Poland, the Polish border, and the fact that refugees are being taken from the Middle East, in particular Afghanistan. They're being put on the border of Poland in the middle of winter. And everyone's wondering, okay, why are they doing that? Have you ever asked yourself, and this is from the far left, the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation put out this wonderful idea through The Guardian in one of their articles, and they're talking about how terrible this is, how much of a devastation this is. Here's the part that's really important, because they can't avoid this. Quote, subjected to a disinformation campaign, the refugees from the Middle East that are on the Polish border, the refugees receive conflicting reports from Belarusian services, which distribute forms about settling in Poland or in Germany. This fosters hopes for a safe journey. But the real aim is to camp them on the Polish border to put pressure on the European Union. Some disturbing reports suggest migrants are being forced to participate in violence as part of the Belarusian attempts to provoke Polish officials. With the risk of an escalation of violence, activists in the forests, these are progressive activists in the forests of Poland, would like to remind the world that the refugees from the Middle East are not aggressors. They are hostages to the Lukashenko regime, which is Belarus, which is using them for its agenda. Okay, think about this for a second, folks. The United States is so weak right now that we're not paying attention to this. We could stop this. We could stop this. The United States can stop this. The Biden-Harris administration can stop this. We're in the Middle East. We have a controlling interest. We are there in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's where they're getting most of these refugees, and they're shipping them out. Syria is a different issue, but a lot of them are from Afghanistan and Iraq. We had the capability to help control this. When we failed, when we lost Afghanistan and gave it over to the Taliban, to ISIS, to Al-Qaeda, it was then that we started seeing them. We're seeing the bad governments like Lukashenko in Belarus, taking people by force from the Middle East and putting them on the Polish border for politics. They are killing people at the Polish border for politics because people are freezing to death. Kids are dying. Now, I don't blame Poland because it's not Poland's fault. The kids aren't dying in Poland. They're dying in Belarus. They're dying because they're being used as political pawns. And what has the United States said about that? I mean, the European Union has said almost nothing. They've pretty much let this go. They're trying to let everyone forget about it. But the Biden-Harris administration that loves Europe more than America, is trying to transform America into Europe, into a socialist nation, and trying to open up our borders. What are we saying? What are we doing? Because we could stop this. But we're not strong enough to stop Belarus, a country, most people listening to this program, not only can you not pronounce it, you don't even know where it is. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. It's a small little nothing country. Honestly, it's not big. It's about the same size as Poland. It's a tiny country. It's not important, really, for almost anything, except its connection to Russia, its connection to communism, to socialism, and its desire to increase its power in the world. That's the only thing that Belarus is really important for. And they're taking advantage of the European Union, and they're taking advantage of the United States and the lack of leadership, the lack of accountability. And that's the thing that I'm most upset about. You know, you could make an argument, that the progressive ideology is a good thing. Okay, show me where it works. Show me how it's more responsive. Show me how it cares more about people. It doesn't care about the people who are being used by Belarus, that are being imported from the Middle East over to the Polish border. It doesn't care about them. It doesn't care about the Ukrainians because it's negotiating appeasement with Russia right now, and it's allowing Russia to say, oh, we're going to grab a lot more land and become more powerful. It's not working in Iran, where they're saying they're going to build a nuclear weapon, and they're going to use the money from the United States, from the Biden and Harris administration, to increase the net global terror in the world, because that's what Iran does. They fund global terror. It's what they did in 2015, and we had then Secretary John Kerry tell us that. You're going to tell me, well, no, but they're worried. But that's not the most important thing, Mike. You got to remember, it's about the climate change. That's the most important thing. Is it? Is it really? Okay, fantastic. We can't predict the weather tomorrow. And you're telling me that we're going to change the weather tomorrow? We don't even understand how the weather is going to affect this town tomorrow. And you're telling me we're going to change the weather in the world? Okay, sure. Because the temperature and the weather has changed every day for as long as human beings have existed on the planet. Because the planet's been a global snowball and it's been a global desert 26 times. That's according to the science. And, of course, the science from climate change, from those scientists, that they are absolutely correct. They're always correct. You got to believe the science. And not one scientific theory on climate has ever been correct. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. Read the reports are out there. Read the scientific reports. You don't have to be a scientist to read the results of an experiment. They've always failed. They've always got it wrong. And that's the most important thing. Guess what? It's not. So James Lucid, hi James. James mentions the covered up science of the ongoing Fukushima meltdowns. I thought that was under control in Japan. This is referencing the meltdown in Japan of a nuclear power plant, which is very rare. It's incredibly rare that any of them do that. But it did. And I thought that by this, about a year ago, year and a half ago, they brought that under control for the most part. I haven't heard that meltdown is continuing. Could be wrong. I can't follow everything. But I'm not familiar with that. That's the thing, they want you to think it's under control. Well, I have not seen information, although I will admit I haven't been looking at that subject around the world, but I'm not familiar with any sources, credible sources, that have identified an ongoing problem. But see, that's why we need an effective government. Because if it is ongoing, why aren't we having, isn't that something we should be concerned about? Isn't that something that the United States should be involved with? It's with one of our allies. It's Japan. Shouldn't we be helping Japan? It troubles me. It troubles me, folks, that we are allowing so much to go so wrong. And we have the ability, and that's one of the goals for 2022. Let's fix this. Let's correct this. I'm not telling you to become a Republican. I'm not telling you to become a Libertarian. I'm not telling you to be conservative. I'm not telling you to change everything in your life. I'm saying let's have these conversations and fix this. Let's pay attention to the details that actually matter. Let's ask for the accountability from our elected politicians, regardless of what party they are in, and tell them, when you're in charge of the southern border, you do something about the southern border. You don't make it so that terrorists can cross our southern border like just happened. I don't think that's too much to ask for. I don't think it's too much to ask for that. I don't think it's too much to ask that we say to Russia, not just that, oh, we're going to use the same tactics we've used in 2014, and we're just going to let you take whatever you want. We're just going to fall under the appeasement. Don't roll over. There's a reason why they didn't try this under the Trump administration. Whatever you may think about President Trump, he was strong. He was considered a strong president around the world, kind of like Reagan. He was considered strong. You want to say, well, they were considered cowboys. They were considered crazy. I don't care. You know what that meant? More peace in the world. People weren't stupid. Whether it's because they were afraid of them and thought they were cowboys or clowns, it doesn't really matter. No one wanted to piss them off. That's a good thing. It made the world more peaceful. Now we have a less peaceful world. Gee, which one's better for the world? And I understand. Yes, radioactive. And speaking about Japan and the Fukushima meltdown, yeah, radioactive water is a problem. It does. It's a problem. It's not as big a problem. If the evidence has been correct, what we have found is that the Earth naturally filters through the ocean the radioactivity. It takes years, but it does filter it through. But it's still a problem short term, and does cause problems for fish and for people in that region and where the water trails until it does get filtered out several years later. So I'm not saying it's not, because Bellin is asking, radioactive water is pouring into the ocean from Fukushima. Isn't that a problem? That's a problem. We got to get that under control. I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know. And if there's anything that you'll see on this program, whether people agree with me or not, I always will come to you and I will try and give you the evidence that I have, that I know is correct and credible, so that you can tell me, Mike, I think you're wrong. I think you're right. There's more to it. That's fine. But I'm never going to, you won't hear me say, just because I need an answer, I'm not going to say, I agree or I disagree, or I know about this when I don't. I don't know enough about it. I'm honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you folks, because I'm not going to make up these things. I'm not going to say something just to say it and to blow smoke in your eyes. That's not what I do. I don't, oh, that is definitely a spam account. So don't go to it, folks. It's a spam. So I never do that. I'm never going to. It is interesting. It is a concern, Bellin, and to James. I do think that's a concern. I think it's important. I don't know enough about it. But I will look into it. And if the media is doing the same thing with the Fukushima reactors as they're doing with what they're doing with Poland, which is hiding it, what they're doing with the southern border, which is hiding it, what they're doing about the very thing that we've been screaming about and afraid of since March, which are terrorists getting into America across the southern border, then yeah, because that's why we're not hearing about it. Because they'd have to admit, well, one, the Republicans are right. Two, they failed to do anything. So that's why you don't hear that terrorists are coming across our border. Because the media is more busy and more excited at trying to tell you that, there it is. They're more busy and more excited about telling you that Let's Go Brandon was a joke call. Wasn't a joke call. He was very serious. He meant it. He understood that some people think it's vulgar, but he also thinks that, it's important to tell our elected officials when they're failing. But the media is more happy to tell you about that than they are happy to tell you about what's going on in Poland, ignoring the fact that, Sebastian Gorka is being abused, that his security clearance is being abused, and the fact that he's being blamed and attacked for not doing anything wrong. I keep hitting the wrong button there. Bellin, thank you. Yes, Bellin mentions that we love your honesty. Thank you. I try my very best. I really do. And we try and grow the channel and make it better week after week. That's why we do the show. And I love the fact that you guys tell me what you think. Especially when you tell me, you think I'm right. You tell me I think I'm wrong. You call into the show at 607-242-1582 and you say whatever it is you think. And you tell me about things that I don't even think about. I love that. And yes, the media is very good at silencing the truth. And you know what? That's why we have freedom in America. To be able to find the truth ourselves, because it is there. If you notice, I look at what's going on around the world. I read other newspapers. I read other news media. I try and get a lot of different sources because I don't trust any one of them, whether it's on the left or the right. But we can get a consensus and we can learn more and we can see there's a lot more going on. We just need to be proactive about it. That's what I think. Oh, wow, it's been 2.5 hours. Time flies sometimes. So let me ask you folks. I think I had one other thing. So, looking at this Christmas, I'm pretty sure everyone in America got a lump of coal. I think we can all say collectively that we got a bunch of lump of coals. One of the few things that was actually beneficial is knowing that 50 Americans were able to get back to the United States on December 19th. People that the Biden-Harris administration, that every single Democrat in elected office at every level of our government ignored. They denied these people existed. They denied that these Americans had that they were anything, that they weren't real. They just ignored them. They abandoned them. They just discounted them completely. And 50 of them showed up on December 19th in the United States coming back home. And that's fantastic. That's one of the only things that wasn't a lump of coal that we've gotten for 2021. We've got inflation at 6.8%, and I will tell you that it is higher than that. And you will tell me, I'm sure, that when you go and buy meat, when you go to the store, you're seeing it closer to 22%. I think the realistic number is 12. And I think our government's going to finally admit that next year as they put out another stimulus, and they're going to increase the national debt by another couple $1 trillion on top of what we normally spend, 5, 6, maybe $7 trillion in 2022, trying there, by the way, into an election, and it's going to make inflation even worse. I think our southern border is going to be even worse. I think we're going to find more terrorists trying to cross our southern border. I think that the Afghan refugees that I have been asking about since September 1st to over 15 elected officials, excuse me, from every level of government, from the local to the federal in New York State, those people that they have no idea about that are coming into our communities. Some of them are already in our communities, and you have never been told about that, and we know nothing about them, except that we know that in 4 states so far that they have been released into, women are being attacked, minors are being attacked. I think that's going to get worse in 2022 as well. I think we have some problems. Ms. K says, yes, I value that you say that you don't know, and you will follow up and you will, when you look into it. I hate people that piss in your pockets. I appreciate critical thinking. Thank you. That's what this is. We critically think. We make conclusions. Sometimes we're wrong. Most of the time we tend to be right. I say that not to brag. I say that because you can look at you've seen the values, you've seen everything that we've put out. We've told you about things. Some of them are popular, some of them aren't, but we tell you, and we tell you what we think and why we think it. And most of the time I'm happy when I'm wrong, because the trend we are seeing is not a positive one. I would prefer to be wrong. I would prefer that the Afghan refugees that will be entering New York State never attack or assault a woman or a minor. I hope that is the case for 2022 and forever. The odds are that's not the truth. The odds are, based on all evidence we've had in the 4 states we've seen that were the initial experiment, based on the fact that 52,000 of these people we know nothing about, and they come from a distinctly different ideology and worldview, we're going to see some problems in New York State and every other state that they're in. That's what I truly believe. That doesn't make them evil people, but it does mean that there may be people in that group that we should have never let into this nation. And if we actually did background check, we wouldn't have them there. But the government's more worried about me getting a background check so that I can get a gun, which is my Second Amendment right, than to have a background check on a guy from Afghanistan, the home of the Taliban, where ISIS and Al-Qaeda are actively running around swearing that they're going to kill every single American. They're more than happy to have 52,000 people from that country just running randomly around the United States without any background check, rather than letting me get a handgun because I have to get a background check. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And that's why we're going to see a problem in 2022. And we're going to see the government lie to us, just like they lied about the number of Americans in Afghanistan. They told us it was 85. I just showed you 50 that they didn't count on. The number officially from the government, very quietly, from the undersecretary over at the Pentagon, is 450. We found out it's 479 and actually maybe 2,000. We've been saying that since September. Actually, we've been saying that since August. We've been telling you that. Government lied to you, to your face. Why do we trust a government that lied to our face demonstrably? It is an absolute fact. We cannot trust the Biden-Harris administration because they have lied to the American people in our faces, and we can prove it. It's called the Americans in Afghanistan. It is a fact. It is indisputable. And if there is no reason to question the government, there you go. We need to do that. And there are more questions. And we need to do this because our friends in the United Kingdom, our friends in Sweden, our friends throughout in France and in India, Canada, they are watching and they are counting on us being able to stand up for democracy. And if we can't do it for our own people, they don't trust that anyone else is going to do it because no one else has done it. And that's how the world changes, my friends. Changes a lot. So, of course, if you disagree, I'm more than happy to hear them. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive. You can send in your comments like so many have, like Missy, Bellin, we've had from James and Jason and Tina and so many others. I'm happy to hear it. Because I'd like to be wrong about that. I'd like to be wrong about all those things I just said. Because we're going to start a new year. The next episode we have will be in the new year. It'll be January 2nd. January 2nd of 2022. And I would love, on that day, to be so wrong about all of these things and that we're going to see such an improvement in America. I would love that. It's not going to happen. Realistically, it's not going to happen. By the way, folks, if you've come in late, if you've been watching the show, as always, at the end of the show, we're going to put links to everything that we've talked about so that you can see it for yourself, that you can see it in full context, and you'll be able to make your own decision about it, as we always do. And we're going to be here next week, day after New Year's Day, day after. So the 2nd of January, we'll be here, and we're going to be doing our show. We did 280 episodes this year, and we're going to do at least as many next year. That's my plan. Hopefully, we're going to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you've made it this far, please like, share, more importantly, subscribe. Let us be able to reach more people and hear all of your thoughts, all of your voices, whether you agree or you disagree. Just not the bots that show up every so often, but real people. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear what you have to say. And by the way, I want to thank everybody for being here day after Christmas. I appreciate you all. I know you could be watching football right now. You're not going out to watch Matrix 4, and that's okay. But you might be seeing another movie. You could be doing so much else, and I understand that, and I appreciate the time that you spend with me. I hope I make it informative and entertaining, or at the very least, entertaining, worth the time. By the way, if you haven't noticed, this is a gift. I got it from my mom. Let me show you real quick. So, got it from my mother. I like it. If you like it, leave a comment. Tell my mom that she has good taste in sweaters. I think she does. Love you, Mom. I really do. And let me also mention in closing, God, it's all messed. If you find that, I know some people watch this show. Thank you. My mother's got good taste. But let me mention in final thoughts here that, well, maybe the final thoughts. That if, I know sometimes people watch this program or they just listen to it in the background, they'll turn it on and they'll cook and clean and live life, go to work and do things, but they're listening to this in the background in the show. And I appreciate that. I thank you, each and every one who do that. But I know sometimes people also listen in because they feel like they don't have any friends. They don't have anyone else to turn to. They don't have another voice that they can hear that agrees with them. They feel like that they're the only conservative, like in colleges. I know sometimes some of the kids in the colleges, they'll tell me, Mike, I feel like I'm the only conservative. I'm the only Republican in this entire school. I'll tell you, you're not alone. You may be sitting there in your home, in your town, at your job, and you think, I'm the only conservative around here. No, you're not. A lot of people just don't talk about it. I do. And I don't want you to feel like you're alone, because you're not alone. Never. And you are loved. I love you. I love you for being my audience. I love you for being alive. I love you whether you agree with me or not, on any particular issue or not. I love you. And I want the very best for you. I really do. I do this every week because I want America to get better. I want us to live in a better nation. I want our kids to inherit a better nation. And therefore, I believe because we get a better nation, I think the world gets a better nation. That's my goal. That's my idea. That's my mission. That's what I'm after. Not fame, not riches. I want a better world. I think this helps to get us there. The more we talk, the better ideas we get, the better we get as a world. I truly believe that. And I want you to know you're not alone. Because I think most people want the same thing. We want a better world. We want to live a better life, and we want a better world. I think everyone agrees with that. So don't sit there and go, but they don't like Republicans. They don't like conservatives. They don't like libertarians. Screw that. I do. And most people I know do. And most people I know don't care. And the people who do care about that, screw them. Leave them alone. Walk away from them. You don't need those people in your life. Not because you should isolate, but because you don't need negativity in your life. There's enough things to be worried about in life. Not false things, not things that are made up, not silly things like, I don't like your politics. You don't have to know what my politics are. It's not important. It doesn't change who you are. And I want you to know that, because I know when people start feeling like I'm separated, I'm isolated, no one else believes what I believe, no one else thinks like I do, I'm just alone. And that starts a cycle of these negative, dark thoughts, especially in the holidays, especially if you don't have kids or family like I don't. And then you wind up going down this dark path. And sometimes that leads to thinking about hurting yourself or hurting others around you, or using drugs and alcohol and substances to try and take away the pain. Please don't do that. Don't do that. That's why on the screen you've seen here, there's the suicide hotline, the domestic abuse hotline, the substance abuse hotline. You have a phone, call someone, call a friend, walk outside, go to a coffee house, go to a bar, go to a diner, watch people, talk to the waitress, watch this program, call in if you need to and say, I need help. Whatever you need to do, you're not alone. And you don't need to hurt yourself. You don't need to hurt others. You don't need to escape from the world. You just need time and to know that you are loved. And I guarantee you, I'm not the only one. I guarantee you, there are more people. If you ask for help, if you ask people, if you're loved, there's going to be more than just me on the internet saying, I love you. And you can be helped. And we'll be there to try and help you as best as we can. Maybe that means to talk to someone else. Oops. Maybe that means trying to get you to help to someone else who can help even better. Whatever it takes. But I tell you what, you're not alone. And people will help. And you are loved. That's so important to remember during these holidays. And I know it's so difficult for so many people at this time, because it's difficult for me. I'm single. I got no kids. You guys help me every week. Miss K says, yes, informative and brings awareness. Open to thinking. That's what the show does. Merry Christmas. And she loves the jumper. Miss K, are you from I would think, you're calling it a jumper. So that makes me think the UK, United Kingdom, or possibly Australia. Could be wrong, but that's when the people who call sweaters jumpers tend to be British or along those lines. And Agent Black can correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I know he is British. I know he's with the United Kingdom. So he can definitely correct me if I'm wrong on that. Australia. Aha, I did get it. Oh, great. I have someone from Australia. I think, Miss K, you're the first one that I know of who's watching the show from Australia. I know there's a few people, but first one. Thank you very much for... What's the time difference for you? Aren't you like 15 hours behind us? Wow. So it's like middle of the night. Thank you for being up with me. Really appreciate that. Might have my time zones wrong, but something like that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I know Agent Black is up late. It's late for him, too. He's 7 hours ahead. Ah, you're ahead. Okay. I know Agent Black. He's in the United Kingdom. He's 7 hours ahead of me. So I know he's up late watching the show. Oh, God, it's first thing in the morning for you. Right. I appreciate that. Well, hopefully it's a good way to start your Monday. It's like having caffeine, having like an espresso shot. You get to talk with me. Something like that. I don't know, folks. That's everything I want to talk about today. And those are the big issues that I've seen that I think are worth talking about. That's the theme that I wanted to get through today. Let's hold our elected officials accountable. Let's make sure they're doing things where they understand the consequences of their actions at the local level, federal level, state level. And that helps us, the state and then federal level. And that will help us to be more effective internationally, which means that helps our allies like Canada and France, Germany and the United Kingdom and in Taiwan. It makes the world more secure. It makes it more peaceful. It makes things better for everyone. That's the way I see it. And hopefully that's true, and hopefully that happens. But of course, I also wanted to make sure that we started the show telling people if you need help, reach out. I'm ending the show saying, if you need help, reach out. And that you're loved. And it's not just me. Hey, Miss K, I got to ask for honesty and accountability. Doesn't mean I'm going to get it from many of these politicians. Joe Biden doesn't even know what "Let's Go Brandon" means. If he doesn't know that after 4 months, I don't know that he knows if he's being honest or not. Very often we've seen Joe Biden's history of just making up facts. So, and Kamala Harris is out for Kamala Harris. She's as with power hungry as Hillary Clinton. But if we don't try, they will never improve. That's just a fact. 2 hours, 48 minutes. I think we've covered it all for today, I think. I hope everyone's going to enjoy the 26th here, that everyone's going to enjoy the start of their new week. Hopefully we'll get some answers. Things will improve. Things locally, I'll have more. I'm still looking for more answers about the sexual assault case, if I can find it. Hopefully there'll be no more terrorists trying to get into our southern border. Thank you to the people in Arizona who are protecting our nation. Thank you to our Border Customs Police, that they are making sure our borders are safe as much as they can, as much as they are allowed, and they're keeping those terrorists out. I thank everyone, whether you're a libertarian, a conservative, a Republican, Democrat, or progressive. I thank you all for being here with us. And I look forward to seeing you in the new year, January 2022. Oh, by the way, we will do a year-end top 10. We will get out this week our top 10 list of 2021. So do expect that. Should be a day or two, but we'll have that coming out very shortly. So do expect that. Happy Boxing Day. Yes. Stay safe all. And everyone, I love you. I'll talk to you again next week.